Hello, everybody. Welcome to The Empowered Life. This is Dale Thomas Vaughn. We have a really special first show today. I've got a guest on that I think you guys are going to love. I want to say thank you to the Good Men Project for sponsoring the show. You will be able to see us there at the Good Men Project. We're also at EmpowerMentorship.com. So today, I'm going to talk to you about the myth of tomorrow. And have you ever found yourself wishing you had more time to do what you wanted to do with your life, right? So do you ever find yourself, have you ever thought, like, I'm making big plans to turn over a new leaf tomorrow, but this tomorrow thing never seems to show up? Like your birthdays seem to come faster and faster every year. The reason this happens is that time is slippery. And we let it get away from us when we believe that there's this, we believe in the myth of tomorrow. Right, this sort of foreign land. The goals and the distance that we create are really important, but only so that we can extrapolate down to the steps that are directly in front of our feet. We love Superman because he can fly right up to the peak without any hindrance, but he doesn't have to take the small steps like us mere mortals. And see, a lot of us are really great at envisioning the peak and wanting to desperately get there, but the real Supermen are the ones who have a strong enough vision to get up and take those steps in the right direction, knowing that the peak will be there when they are ready. And it takes real guts to see those baby steps and to commit to that journey. So forgetting the myth of tomorrow and living each today, as that's empowerment. That's really the empowered life. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this. So how do you go from believing the myth to debunking it? And I'll continue to use this sort of hiking the peak metaphor. So envision that you have a peak and place it on your map, right? But don't forget to place yourself on the map as well. And decide on a path or direction. And then forget about the peak and follow the path in front of you each day, knowing that you've set out a good path for yourself to get to the peak. If you've done a good job of defining that path, then your only task is to walk each day. Forgetting the peak is kind of like forgetting that tomorrow ever existed. To me, it's like taking the daunting nature out of a long journey. Like if you knew how long the journey was going to be, you wouldn't never start. So it allows for a simpler existence. So say this out loud: there is no tomorrow. I'm going to live today in a big way. And that feels really good. That's something I love to tell myself. It has helped me on my path. And along the path, there are factors that sort of affect us positively or negatively: health, money, relationships, etc. But it's really important to keep the positive influences on the path. Equally important to shed the weight that keeps you from moving forward each day. So right now, I want you to decide what you spend time on each day that's sort of irrelevant to your main purpose. Is it a video game? Is it bad television? Is it politics? Is it sports news? It was fantasy sports for me. And I want you to see if you can take a 48-hour break from it. And this break from your bad habit or from the habit that keeps you from your vision, this break is going to give you some time to step toward your vision today. And if it feels good, and it's probably going to feel good for you, see if you can take another break. Another 72-hour break maybe next week, and you get the picture. Sooner or later this habit will work its way out. And as you near your peak, you will find that another peak is in the distance. This is sort of the trick, that this is a sure sign you're on the right path. You're on the right path if when you peak, there is another peak in the distance. Our purpose reveals itself in layers, which is beautiful and keeps us interested. And if you found out today that the end goal was Everest, you definitely wouldn't start, right? But if it's the hill around the corner, you could probably climb that. That's the first peak. So see the attainable stretch goal in front of us and then reach out and go get it. Do it today. Start today. So what is your next peak? Ask yourself, what can you do today, like right this minute, to move in that direction. So I want you to forget about the myth of tomorrow. And the reason I have you here today is to talk to somebody, to hear the story of somebody who I think embodies this, somebody who with them to do something amazing, to climb Everest, really. And we're going to ask him for his story. I want you to meet Gregory, who I have a lot of respect for. Say hi, Rick.
Hello, Dale. Thank you. I appreciate being here.
Glad to have you. Quickly, Rick was the Uganda consultant for Water for All International, which is engaged in an effort to catalyze a well drilling movement designed to empower the poorest of the poor, beginning in northern Uganda. After 30-plus years of construction, sales, and sales management, Rick and his wife spent 10 of their most productive years of their lives giving to the poor in Sudan, in Uganda, in Bolivia, etc. And I think that the story that Rick has to tell is going to be really empowering. So what I want to do is ask Rick the story from your lips. How have you lived that empowered life?
Gosh, it's been what my wife calls a lifetime of wonderfuls over the last 10 years. And it really didn't start out to be this way. I think I want to go back for just a moment and challenge the idea of Superman, because I sure don't feel like a Superman. I feel like an ordinary guy, just like every other man that I know. And I think maybe the only difference is that when some of the opportunities, or maybe they were challenges to begin with, but they turned into opportunities, when they arose and I was asked, I said yes. And I said, I think that's probably the only thing that might be different, is I simply said yes. So what that looked like for us is that Sherry and I ran away and got married when we were 18 years old. We were high school sweethearts. Neither of us had gone to college, and sort of stuck in a life that looked like it was going to go a certain way. I was a salesman because I didn't have an education. I didn't see myself progressing further than that. And there were people along the way that challenged me to think differently, both about myself and about life and about my faith, about a lot of different things. But what ended up happening is that somebody asked me once to look at a certain situation and to see if I could help them find someone else to fill a role. This happened to be in Mexico, which I didn't even tell you about, but it happened to be in Mexico. And as I considered that role, and as I considered the location, as I considered the opportunity, it dawned on me that I was praying for God to send someone to do a job that He had trained me for 7 years to do. And so what I ended up doing was completely crazy. We owned a house in San Diego. We sold the house, and because we were convinced that this was something that we were called to do, we felt like we didn't want to be sort of we wanted to be sure that we were living the life of faith, and so we gave all the money away, every cent. We didn't tell anyone what we were doing. A few of our closest friends knew. And we left, and we moved to Mexico, to a little town called Tecate on the border of California. And lived there for a year, and over the next 7 years, watched as God really supplied food, clothing, gifts for our kids, Christmas stories. I mean, you name it. We never asked for a thing, but we watched it all come in. And that kind of set the stage for us, because that was when people first called me crazy. And, that was the point at which I realized that the stuff that we see around us doesn't necessarily mean what we think it looks like. And that the world is so much bigger than what we see. So that was probably what really started it. And then from there, and by the way, stop and ask me questions along the way if you need to do that.
You're doing such a great job. The world is so much bigger than we realize.
Yeah, it's bigger than we can see as well. And that's the thing that struck me. Fast forward now, we had 3 children. All 3 of our kids were grown, and our youngest was at a university in Los Angeles studying intercultural studies. That was his major. And one of the things that he was studying was this whole concept of how do we, as sort of rich white Christians or rich white Westerners, invade the poverty of underserved people. And so along with that perspective, he was reading all these books, and there were some books that he read that he said, "Dad, Mom, you guys need to read this." And I'm trying to think of one of the books. I didn't know the story was going to go this way. I'll think of it. But what it did is it challenged me to really question. I say that I believe certain things about my life. I say that I believe certain things about other people's lives. I say that I believe certain things about my faith, but does my life look like what I say I believe? And I had to come to the conclusion that it didn't. The name of the book was Rich Christians in an Age of Hunger. And
that's a pretty big, profound moment to think to yourself, am I living the life I propose to live? Am I living the espoused ideals? Tell me, when you decided that you weren't, what was that feeling like?
I was crushed. I felt like, okay, I was at that point probably in my mid to late 40s. And all three of my kids are raised. They all were married at that point, or getting ready to be married at that point. And I felt like, has my life been a sham? And I actually came to the conclusion that, in a sense, it was, because I was living a life that other people wanted me to live. I wasn't living the way that I said I believed, and there was this dissonance taking place inside of me that just crushed me. I felt, I'll tell you how I felt. What it made me feel like is that I jumped out of a plane and I was in free fall. That's how I felt.
So what appeared as the parachute for you? In other words, what in that moment, in that crushing feeling, which I also know myself, what in that feeling what came from that you said, okay, here's my way to turn this around, to live the life that I know I believe in, and to take the bull by the horns, so to speak? What was that? What was the action, or what was the moment? Was there a mentor involved? Was there a profound...
There was a mentor. There was a mentor involved, and it was one of those... It was one of those cattle happens probably once or twice in a lifetime, and this is what it was. I was 50 years old. I was ready to go back to school because that was one of the things that I felt like I needed to do in order to fulfill what I needed to be or to become. I needed to finish an education, so I was going to do that. But the other thing that happened is that my son's senior year, this is the younger son that was studying intercultural studies, he graduated from college. His then girlfriend, who's now his wife, came to live with us during the summer between her junior and senior year. And she also was involved in the intercultural studies program. And for them to graduate, one of the things that has to happen is that they need to spend at least 6 weeks in an intercultural context. So she went to Uganda, and what she did is she went to this guy's hospital. His name is Dr. Scott Kellerman, and that's a name that if you don't know who he is, you need to know it. But Dr. Scott Kellerman sold his practice in Nevada City, California. He was the chief of medicine for the main hospital up there. Sold his practice, sold his house, sold all of his toys, sold his Lake Tahoe house. He sold everything that was of material value to him. And he and his wife moved to the bush where Diane Fossey was studying the mountain gorillas, and where Sigourney Weaver starred as Diane Fossey in the movie Gorillas in the Mist.
Sure.
He went to that rainforest and set up a hospital to care for the pygmies that had been dispossessed by Sigourney Weaver and by the movement that she created to conserve the gorillas. So that's kind of the backstory no one knows about, that you have 351 mountain gorillas that are conserved, but that came at a cost of somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40,000 people. So my now daughter-in-law was at this place. She came back after her 6 weeks there, and she put all these photos on the desktop of our computer. And the seminal moment that you asked about is coming. So she has all these photos on our computer, and one of these photos is a picture of her holding this little tiny pygmy baby. And as she's holding this baby, she has a stethoscope listening to its heart. Now, Bethany had no medical training. So it seemed as though every time Sherry, my wife, walked into our office and saw this photo on the desktop, she would pause, and she finally came to the conclusion that she said this: I'm a mom. I can do this. And so what we did is, this is the event that catalyzed everything. We sent an email to Dr. Scott Kellerman, and we said, we're 50 years old, we've never been out of the United States, we've never been to Africa, we don't have medical training, we have no idea what we would do, but if you think it would be helpful, we're willing to come. He responded back. He responded back, 2 words: just come. And it was like, are you kidding? You know? So that was what began the process. And then it took us a year to prepare for it, but in the summer of 2005, we spent that entire summer in the bush with Dr. Scott Kellerman, caring for the pygmies that had been dispossessed by Sigourney Weaver and the gorilla, the Dian Fossey Gorilla Fund. So that was the event that changed our lives.
Wow. So how did it feel once you then got those 2 words and said, okay, we're doing this? I mean, contrast the 2 feelings between, I'm crushed that I find out, this is, you know, in your own words, please do this in your words, I'm crushed that I find out that I'm not living the life I believe I should, versus the next moment of just come. Scared
the snot out of me. We had no idea. We had no idea what this was going to look like. But there was a sense of purpose in it, and it was a time that built, because it took us a year to get to the place where we could leave for 3 months. I mean, we both had jobs. We were both getting in school full time at that time, and so it was a significant life change for us to make the commitment to go for 3 full months. But we did, and so the sense of purpose, I think, is probably signifying most that period of time in our life. It's kind of like all of a sudden, oh, this is what we were meant to do. Oh, okay, I get it. And so we kind of buckled down and we went after it. So that's really what happened.
Would you recommend that course of action to others?
In a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. What it did is it set us free, because, I mean, think about this, Dale. I live in a house in Huntington Beach, California. I live 1.5 miles from the water. My house is paid for. I have nothing holding me here except this culture that I'm supposed to love, right? Mm-hmm. I have everything that I could want, and yet I was empty. And I felt like I had compromised my life because I wasn't living the way that I said I believed. There was so much about my life that I was living a lie. And I was living to please other people, and I was living to please my family, and I was living to get the final approval from my father that I'd never received, or at least I never thought I had. But what this did is this said, oh my gosh, the world is so much bigger than those little things that you thought you were living in. It was magic.
Yeah, it's when I first heard, guys who were paying attention, who were paying attention and listening to this story, when I first heard Rick's story, I was like, this is, everybody needs to know how you feel like, I mean, I think a lot of us feel this, that the world around us just isn't quite full. There's something that's not quite right. And it's often, I think, this like full service gift to the world that we feel we're not fully giving, or if we could fully give it, everything would change. And when I heard your story, Rick, I thought, here's a guy who, and now you've done this, you've come back, you've committed to refunding the past 10 years of your life with a new company that you've set up, and you've got even a community mindset while you're building your company, which I really appreciate. And and I want you guys, anybody who's paying attention, rickgregory.us. He's a great writer. You're going to see a lot more of his writing because this is the kind of story that needs to be out there more. Rick, I hope you know that.
Thank you.
And I hope that you guys will support. He's got a great company and cause. And what's the website for your company, Rick?
HeliosCleaner.com.
Helios Cleaner. It's a great product that that again they support 5% of their revenue, or is it profit? I'm sorry.
No, it's revenue. It's 5% of our revenue.
5% of your revenue goes back into the communities. You can choose where that goes. It's an incredible process that they're doing to fund their passion as well as create something in the world today. So
yeah,
please do support that. Rick, I want to really appreciate you coming on. What I'd like for you to do is sum up your wisdom into one fortune cookie message. Is that possible for you?
It's probably, when we had earlier talked about that, I thought that the best message would be something like, tomorrow actually started this morning. I think probably what I would say is that when the crazy opportunity arises, say yes.
When the crazy opportunity arises, say yes. I like that.
Yeah.
And if you would like, I also would like to offer the camera and microphone to you right now to just offer some thanks or gratitude to a mentor in your life who helped you. Maybe it's Dr. Kellerman, or maybe it's your daughter-in-law.
I think I would really like to say thank you to Dr. Scott Kellerman. Dr. Scott Kellerman, he truly is the Superman. He's the one that went to Uganda and sold everything. It's cost him incredible amounts to do what he's done. But he's built a hospital in southwest Uganda that is now the best hospital in all of sub-Saharan East Africa. And Scott Kellerman is the man who inspired Sherry and me to step beyond our fears and to step into a life that is unbelievably fulfilling and unbelievably beautiful, because he taught us what it looks like to give our lives away and to invest in the lives of the poorest of the poor, but to also invest in the lives of those rich Christians in the age of hunger that other book talks about. It's not just in the poor, but he invests in those who have any kind of a heart to also invest in the poor. So to Dr. Scott Kellerman, I can't say thank you enough, and it's been a joy and an unbelievable blessing to have you write on the canvas of Sherry and my life. Thank you.
I want to say thank you, Rick, for being here. Your story is a blessing to us. I really think that the more people who hear it, the better this world is going to be. And I want to say to everyone who's listening, did you like the episode? If you did, be sure to subscribe to the next one and tell a friend about us. Go to EmpowerMentorship.com and sign up on the right side of the website there, and I'll make sure to send you the next one that's coming up. We're going to do these every Tuesday at 6 p.m. live. And if you want access to any more life-changing training, lessons, and videos on intention, on motivation, on inspiration, again, head over to EmpowerMentorship.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Make sure to like us on Global Center for Healthy Masculinities on Facebook and the Good Men Project on Facebook. And until next time, remember, you have the power. You have the power to boldly live your purpose.
Amen.
You have the power to boldly
Yes, you do.
live your purpose and to surround yourself with greatness and to feel the exhilaration of the empowered life today. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.